everybody. I'm KJ Osman. I'm an international correspondent at Variety. We're here today to discuss how UK creative talent is attracting international investment, why leading international businesses are flocking to set up studios in the UK, and what this all means for the local landscape of kids' content. I will hand over now to the panellists to introduce themselves. Waleed, would you like to start?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Waleed Omar. I'm the executive producer, co-founder of Little Critter Workshop from Malaysia and soon to be Bristol.
Sally?
Hello, Hi, I'm Sally Marchant, and I am an executive producer on 123 Number Squad, which has just been commissioned by Sky Kids, and that's it for the moment.
Hi, I'm Mark Taylor from A Productions, a Bristol-based studio. We've been going for about 35 years now, making a lot of children's content. We were acquired at the end of last year by Cyber Group Studios, which is why I'm here, really.
And finally, I'm Kate O'Connor. I'm Executive Chair of Animation UK, 70% winner of the poll in the previous... Hooray! Hooray! Ollie for Prime Minister and all that. But
there is a vacancy.
yeah, an opened up vacancy, I hear. So Animation UK, for those of you who don't know us, which I would find shameful, is the voice of the animation industry in the UK. We're part of the UK Screen Alliance, a trade body that represents VFX, animation, film studios and the post-production sector. It was here 5 years ago that the conversation started about setting up a formal trade body. It was at CMC. Here we are 5 years later, stronger, bigger, bolder, and very ambitious, as you heard from this morning. Anyway, that was way too long. So
No, that was great. Okay, great. So so I'll kick off the questions. So to start with, and I think we'll go down the panel for this one. So Waleed, do you want to take it first? Why is the UK an attractive place for international companies to set up or invest in an animation studio?
Well, I think I have obviously deep roots, as you can tell by my accent, with the UK. But, we've produced a couple of shows from Malaysia, and we've always come to the UK for scripts, development scripts, production scripts. And I think it was just a natural gravitation to the UK to take that further after a long way, 3 years out of being able to travel and develop new shows, and I think we wanted to make a strong impression and strong effort into coming to the UK and putting some investment here and looking to take the next level. And two points, really. Obviously our own shows, but more importantly, look to co-develop and co-produce with other studios, work with development talent and the likes, really. So for me, it was a natural choice. We've always had a good experience working with people. There's like the cultural and language understanding of what we do. So, it's a no-brainer for us, I think.
And Sally, what do you think? What do you think is attracting people in?
Well, I think that in the UK we are kind of world class at. We've got so much talent here, and there's so many people that are great to work with. So, producers. Writers, and we've got just a vast network, and our UK broadcasting for children's TV is just world-renowned. So I guess that's why companies want to come in and invest in the UK. And certainly I'm sure that's what Omens did when they brought me on as an exec producer for 123 Number Squad, is because I've got most people do, but a really great black book of contacts and people that they can draw on now, which they wouldn't have really had access to if they'd stayed in Singapore.
Mark?
What they said, really. There's obviously massive pool of talent here. We've got a very long history of making very, very good content for, as preschool we're known for, obviously. I think we've got a long history of creating very strong IPs which have sold globally and, established the UK as a real hotspot for that. I think we've struggled as an industry, as Kate champions all the things we're fighting for, and we don't actually spend time to look up and realise how good we are at what we do. And I think this is a case of people recognising we are good at what we do and they want to be part of that and they want to plug into that. So there's a very good, solid foundation for what we do. I mean, you can go way, way back to, Pogle's Wood, which was my first show. Hands up. Does anyone remember Pogle's Wood? Hey! Yeah, there you go.
And Kate, what would you say to that?
Well,
question?
yeah. I mean, when we set up, when we did the conversation here 5 years ago to set up Animation UK, it was to do three things: advocacy, create the right business climate, and skills and talent. So, as Mark said, everything everyone said already. But the advocacy thing is something that we had not been doing and arguably still could do more of, because we've got such a long track record. I mean, hugely we're standing on, the shoulders of giants, as I would think was a quote from Question Time the other day. We're brilliant at all techniques. We're fantastically innovative and inventive. We are known for preschool and kids generally, but not really anymore. I know this is kids content audience, but we're pushing those demographic boundaries as well. We're just fabulous storytellers. Our track record and our global reputation is, it's probably always been there, but it certainly does seem to be permeating now. And of course, I think in terms of investment, the other thing that's happened, I think, quite recently is that while there's been a big focus on the growth of the screen industries, high-end TV and film, et cetera, I think there's been a sharp recognition that it's animation quite often that's an investment in business with longevity, with long tail of revenue, and all of the brand development. Mm-hmm. So as well as brilliant humour, pathos, character design, animation techniques, we're business savvies, we're businesses, and that's what investors are looking for.
Yeah, well, that's kind of answered my next question a little bit as well, which is about... No, it's great. But what is it specifically about UK? So I think we've talked a little bit about the fact that it's here, but what is it about UK talent that is so attractive internationally? I mean, Waleed, is there something there that you would want to comment on?
Yeah, I think, working out of Asia, you don't necessarily have the strong connections with the broadcasters and that day-to-day sort of small market interaction, and that understanding of development execs who understand broadcasters in all the sort of things you don't really see. That's really a key component. I think for us personally as well, our studios design language is very different to the UK, and we're sort of looking at both obviously story, character, and also design as well, which is something that the UK has a very kind of unique look at, which is something we'd love to explore.
That's interesting. I mean, Sally, is that something that you feel as well that there's like a unique, in sort of in relation to UK talent being attractive? I'm not going to ask you to toot your own horn, but do you think there's something unique here that talent offers international investors?
Yeah, I think it was going back to what I was saying earlier. I think there's just such and what Kate was saying, well, we were all actually saying it, but there's just so much talent here, and we've got that pedigree, and obviously that's going to be attractive, because if you want to, you have to commercialise and make money from what you're investing in, from a business point of view, and I think that the way of doing that mainly is you're going to want to attract the best that you possibly can. And so coming into the UK is, I think you said it, Wally, it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. I mean, as far as talent's concerned, we're acing it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I have to mention the fact that you were involved, obviously, in the original commission of Peppa Pig, right? So, yeah. I mean, that's a pretty amazing... flying the flag for the UK. And so in terms of this international investment being attracted here, I mean, Kate, do you think this is a new phenomenon, or has it always been the way that investment's been coming in?
So one of the few things we don't have in the UK, for Animation UK, is lots of data, actually. We really suffer from a lack of data, because we're quite often kind of buried under the bigger industries of film and television. So I haven't got any stats or data at my fingertips, so apologies from that. I hear a lot from our members, not least those on my immediate right, about investment and growth. And that seems to be, anecdotally, happening far more often. But, you know, as a fact-check thing, I can't give you the nice stats. But I would say it's always been thus. Yep. Although what I think is maybe different now is there's investment in our companies rather than acquisition of and kind of asset stripping, if you like, and taking, you know, our big brands and, you know, the wealth being accrued outside the UK. And Peppa Pig's a great example of that, isn't it? Like a fantastic example of that. You know, 3 guys, a pink pig, crowdfunding before there was a known term for that. You know, and, you know, now what is it? It's probably $3 billion franchise at this stage, with the help of Boris giving a bit of a push there in the year. So, you know, but not now, you know, owned by those creators.
Yeah.
And I see that as being a new trend. I see that as being a really hopeful new trend. And just previously, because I know I am talking too much, but I do think there's something very special about the animation industry in terms of this talent partnership, because I see lots of founders of companies really combining the creative with the business, and I think that's a very compelling draw. So it's like business is not a dirty word. This isn't all about creativity, although our heart's beating, you know, for the audience, etc., etc. And I think that's a really interesting phenomenon in animation. If you look at most companies, they set up with those founding members being both creative and business, and so investment and growth are part of the DNA of the industry.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely answer. And Mark, what do you think about it being, whether this is a new phenomenon? I mean, do you feel that, you know, and I appreciate, again, it's anecdotal, but how do you feel? Do you think this is a new thing, or it's always been this way?
There's been sort of history of it in different degrees. You know, I remember Amblimation setting up in London. I remember Warner's trying to set up a studio. Those were different things where I think they were trying to come in and almost asset strip the talent by setting up a base, and they actually just disrupted the ecosystem, if you will, because they came in, paid massive salaries, and then left, closed at short notice and left, and the whole thing took quite a while to get its equilibrium back. You know, Foundation were taken over by Zodiac. Somebody can correct me if I got this wrong. Marathon, was it, I think? Anyway, but yeah, so there is a kind of ongoing history of this sort of thing happening. There's also waves, I think, of consolidation where media companies will buy a company and then they'll get swallowed and they'll get swallowed, and then all of that kind of goes to pieces. Yeah. So people like Corey and, you know, do that sort of thing. They kind of swell up, burst, and then it all starts again. There's sort of cycles to it as well. So.
I was just going to say, if we're still on the talent as well as
always on the talent.
Trend. Always on talent. This is all about talent, because I was thinking about this and, you know, what makes us unique, because, you know, there's obviously growth of animation overall, which we'll talk about, and I was thinking, in terms of talent, I'll put it out there, you know, are we building on the base of our art school tradition, our publishing tradition of children's literature, our respect for the art form of animation, as well as the hard-edged investment opportunities? Are we building on that tradition, and are we, I'll throw it out there, and our creation, and through that, you know, our curation of writers and directors? And is there a danger, you know, that unless we all act to protect some of that, particularly on the education front, you know, we could lose some of it? Because I think it's such a strong tradition in animation, the art of animation. Yeah. And we're not cartoons, we're animation. So I just say that about the talent as well.
I think it's a fair question. I'm not here to answer the questions, unfortunately. And then in terms of, there are challenges working internationally. So Sally, for example, you work with Singapore. What are some of the practical challenges that someone might need to think about if they are going to start working sort of with companies abroad?
Well, obviously there's a time difference. So they're always 8 hours ahead and I'm always 8 hours behind. So there's that kind of, I have to think ahead to possible challenges that might come up. But on the flip side of that is there's breathing space, and there's a literally a lot of time that if you're coming up with some kind of production problem, then they might pose that to me, and then they'll go to sleep, and then I'll think about it, and I've got all that time as well. I don't, you know, when I was doing Peppa Pig, there's an immediacy all the time, whereas in this respect, it's quite nice because then they'll wake up and then I might have some kind of magic solution for them, or, you know, and vice versa as well. So it works both ways. So, and I think trust is a really big component when it comes to working with someone or a company that's so far away from you. So they have to trust and allow me to do what I do, and I allowed that team to do the same. And I was thinking about when I keep saying Peppa Pig, I just keep saying Peppa Pig. So when I was there, and I came in when Peppa, I think we were doing series 4, and they were already kind of halfway through the production. And they're a very slick animation studio, you know, BAFTA and Emmy Award winning and all the rest of it. So, and I came in at the deep end, and they've obviously got like a shorthand that they just have, and, you know, a language that they use, and I had to understand all of that. And it's really kind of the same with Singapore, in that they're all there, the whole production team are there, and they've got like this whole kind of shorthand that I'm having to learn, and I have to learn like cultural differences and things like that, and such as script turnaround times over there are about 3 to 4 weeks. It's like so quick. And then over here, obviously, we can go 8 to 12. So trying to bridge that gap or that divide. So I'm saying, actually, we need a little bit more time in Singapore, and we're going to try and squeeze at our end but still get the best out of our writers and creative team. So yeah, there's a lot to think about, but it's really nice and it's really fun, and I enjoy it. So yeah, it's nice to have a bit of freedom and a bit of space. So, there we go.
And Mark, what about you?
Well, we've been working internationally for a while. So we've worked with Manila, China, America. We're working with America at the moment with Sesame Street. So we're used to the kind of offset time differences. Sometimes it can be painful. Sometimes you get the benefit. It can work either way. It's not good when they're kind of like hot on your heels. It's interesting at the moment, obviously. I was over in France 10 days ago, and we had a big kind of company get-together, strategy get-together. And for us, that's kind of a real different culture, because we're 150 people in our studio, so it's a reasonable size, but we operate on a very flat sort of hierarchical structure. And the cyber group have got a very distinct sort of hierarchy and management structure that we have to get used to culturally. So not just French, English, but they've got, there's a LA office, so we're dealing with an American team for distribution and sales. They've taken on an Italian studio, they've taken on a Singapore studio. So all of those components now come together. So we're navigating any number of different kind of cultural streams, if you will. So that's going to be interesting. I haven't got an answer to it. It's just going to be finding our way around it. We've been working, for example, with Sesame for the last 5 years, and although, famously, as everyone says, we speak the same language, culturally they're a very long way from where we are, and we bump into each other quite a lot. So I don't doubt there will be little lumps and bumps in the process, but that's the biggest challenge, really. And adapting to the different team processes for us, I think, is going to be just seeing how it works, seeing if they're used to and they're happy to let us do what we do, and if that slots into what they do and the way they work, the processes.
And in terms of some of the advantages, I think one thing you mentioned to me earlier, Mark, was obviously now you're working with the European company have invested. It sort of enables you to bypass Brexit a little bit. So plugging into that bigger company, what are some of the advantages of that you can
There's lots of advantages. We see lots of advantages, which is why we did it. Staff retention. It gives us more muscle in terms of production. So it means we can retain more staff. We can consolidate our training, which is something we discussed in France, about establishing our own training schools, which is a very exciting opportunity. R&D, we can develop our own software and bits and pieces that we will use across the groups. It just gives us a lot more muscle you know, we can plug into an established distribution and development network that they already have, which is great. So as a studio, we've been very lucky to be very busy as a studio. We've done a lot of service work over a lot of years. We've tried to dip our toes into IP development, but it's an expensive, time-consuming, and you require a significant commitment company-wide to get into it properly. We've never been able to crack that nut because we're always too busy doing stuff. But this gives us an opportunity to plug into a ready-made distribution system. And the good thing about it is they're really keen for us to retain our identity. They want, they've bought into us for a reason. They don't want to just turn us into another branch of them. They want to retain what we do well. They recognise what we do well, and they want to make the most of that. So, you know, I see it. There's a lot of positives. Of course, getting back into Europe is a massive positive. Just things like the Cartoon Forum, you know, as a British producer, unless you're associated with a European project, I don't think you can go to the forum. And there's a bit of a hoo-ha with the BBC. I don't know if anyone from the BBC is here, but there's a bit of a hoo-ha about, you know, the BBC are saying, well, we might not go then unless this changes. And I think there are things afoot to try and sort that out. So we can access that sort of thing. I think there's loads of positives for us.
That's great, thank you. And then, Waleed, from your point of view, what about some of the challenges and advantages and opportunities of setting up? I know you've got a long history here, but sort of...
Well, I mean, I just want to echo what Mark said about, the last 3 years, animation has just, like, exploded as far as we're concerned, and everyone's full of work, and, talent is a challenge, and... one of the things for us personally, what I wanted to do as we were coming out of the pandemic and being able to fly again, is to distinctly, separate our organisation in terms of service and having a focus on creating and producing IP again, which would be done from the UK, and let the Malaysian entity just carry on doing what it's done from us. So, the challenges are global, I think. In Malaysia, it's about recruiting animators just as much as it is here. But what interests us is as an indie studio, is to come here and collaborate with other indies, predominantly, and find ways to make shows together. I think that's really the reason why we're here, and the most exciting thing,
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And then, Mark, one of the things that I know we discussed is some of the practical things to consider when someone's investing in you, and being part of a larger entity and the legal process, the housekeeping. So could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been a very steep learning curve for us. I mean, a lot of creative companies basically grow fairly organically, and I know we did. I never set out with a kind of grand vision for, universal dominance. I didn't. I got into it because I was crap at everything else, and it seemed like a good crack at the time. That's me. Cover blown. That's not to say we don't run efficiently and organise. We absolutely have to. We're a big company. We're internationally. We know what we're doing. But our growth is kind of, it's been a bit, we don't sort of sit down. This has made us sit down and really review what we do, why we do it, what do we want from it, where do we want to be, and all of that stuff. Grown-up stuff, basically, which is a bit of a shock to the system for some of us. I never thought, I don't do grown-up stuff. As anyone who knows me will testify. So we've had to kind of get in the loft, get all the dusty boxes down, go through old books, sort out because we do a lot of service work through SPVs. The nature of the beast, if you're making tax credits, you use SPVs. We've had to clean everything up, which is all good, you need to do it, but it's just housekeeping, a lot of housekeeping. So we've had to put everything in order. We've had to work very closely with a legal team and an accountancy team to make sure everything is absolutely watertight, crystal clear, and done and dusted. And it's actually done an awfully lot of good housekeeping for us as a company. I mean, we've got, as I say, 35 years of stuff in the attic, basically. And we've had to, there actually is still physically stuff in the attic, I would say, which I don't want to think about. But Catherine, my co-MD, reminds me regularly I do have to get into the attic to sort it out. There's boxes of cells up there from God knows when. A lot of that. I mean, the legal side was an interesting one because obviously, we got great advice. I'm going to tip my hat to Vanessa here, who handheld us through a lot of it, and we're really grateful for that. But I was staggered by the cost of the legals. And we went out there and we got various quotes from legal companies. We landed with RPC, actually, because we liked them. We felt they had a kind of good relationship with us as a client. They were at the right level of kind of like being able to sort of fight our corner. But some of the quotes, I mean, I'm not giving anything away here. One company were quoting us £500,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Another company quoted us 20 grand. It was like, there's no way you're going to do it for 20 grand. That's just not going to happen. So suffice to say, we spent an awful lot of money, but it was very well spent, and I'm very grateful for having gone down that route. You really do have to get into that and be prepared to commit to it. And the financial costs as well, of all of the due diligence. You really, really have to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. Yes.
It's time consuming, obviously, as well.
Yes,
and it's
yeah.
not time that you can just take out really
No,
from the business.
That was a real strain for both Catherine and myself, because we were, I'm directing a show for the States at the moment, and so that's my day job. But we were both having to chisel out time to do this, and it was meeting after meeting after meeting, and some of these meetings go on for hours. I mean, the due diligence meetings, we literally would go on for like 8 hours. And you kind of feel like there's a little meter in the background pinging every £1,000. And oh God, no, not like that. But yeah, time was a real. It was a real kind of like, how are we going to do this? There were long hours, a lot of extra work, and a lot of. But you have to do it. You have to do the legwork. You can't shortcut it. You can't. It will go horribly wrong if you try to.
Yeah. And Waleed, for you, what do you have sort of advice for UK studios that are looking to grow or attract possibly external investment?
Yeah, I mean, again, we started as free creatives coming together, and I had the fortune of having a business before Little Critter that ran for 12 years, and I managed to unload and start Little Critter. I think one of the most important things is, if you are free creators, someone has to be kind of the sacrificial lamb and stop the fun stuff and start looking at the business, strategically, because to start an animation company, it's a long burn, a long cash burn. So I really had to look at the business from a 5 to 10 year point of view, and ensured that the company's growth was in numbers as well as projects. And I think anyone who wants to attract investment, there needs to be that story of solid fundamentals of the business, but also great shows that you can deliver over that time. So I think these are hand in hand and most important. That's why people like Mark get bought out or get
invested in.
Yeah, sorry.
And so, Kate, for those that are not ready to consider or don't have the time for external investment and that at the moment, what grants and funding are available within the UK, and what sort of call to action would you like to see as well here?
Yeah, well, if I may, can I just pick up on you talked about the opportunities and bypassing Brexit, and I so loved that. I so loved that question. I was hoping you'd ask me it.
Please feel free.
That I'm going to answer it anyway.
You can answer all the questions.
Because it's been such a big deal. It's been such a bloody big deal, the Brexit thing. It's actually been the whole backdrop to Animation UK's existence, and all the worries about mobility of labour and the fact that we rely on a 30% European and international workforce and not having access to European funding. These could be considerable disadvantages. And I am not being Pollyanna. I'm not painting this as some sort of, everything's perfect in the land of the brave and the good. Far from it. How can you today? But actually, we have found ways to bypass Brexit. I think that's why your question is so good, because investment is one of them, and partnership is one of them. We've got such a long history of co-productions with Europe. Animation UK is still a member of Animation in Europe, welcomed as such. Still, fighting for policies. We haven't fixed Cartoon Forum, but we're on it. And there's a very collegiate and embracing kind of culture in us being part of that. The government have, provided the Global Screen Fund, which is supporting co-production and international distribution with an emphasis on global, not Europe. But there are ways that we've done that. And just on a personal front, we've set up this just in the last month, a really strong relationship with the producers and studios in the Republic of Ireland as well as Northern Ireland to create a whole partnership around the island of Ireland. And I think these are not just symbolic. This says everything about the nature of animation and the way we work. And having obviously private investment and investment generally, only helps with that. So sorry, that was the question you didn't ask. Me. Grants. Right. Okay. There's a bit of a longish one here as well, but I'm not going to list them all out. But I do want to say something I've sort of said before, that when Animation UK was set up, there's a network of screen agencies in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, some in the English regions, the BFI, the BFC. There's a whole kind of cast of organisations that are here to support the growth of the screen industries. And actually, one of the reasons why Animation UK was set up back then was to hold those organisations, the feet of those organisations to the fire and say, what about animation? Because everyone was saying, yay, it's great for your high-end telly or your indie film, despite what we know about that sector. But no one really seems to understand the nature of animation. And I'm so pleased to say that that has changed. I mean, one of the first things that happened, the BFI introduced the animated shorts programme, which has now had its second run. Big shout out to Helen Brunston on that. Because that's essential funding for people making that initial calling card, the development of talent, the opportunity to develop your short. There are organisations like Screen Scotland or Creative Wales or the brilliant Northern Ireland Screen, fantastically important in the nations because they put money into content, but also start-up, advocacy, getting people to markets, all of that stuff. It's a bit more patchy in the English regions, but there is support from local authorities and LEPs. They're understanding a little bit more about the clusters in Manchester and Bristol, in Yorkshire. There's research and development funding, which you can tap into to develop new content and new ideas around immersive and XR. I'm not going to list all this, but, and we're busily collating all this information, but it's a bit of a task to find that money, but there is money to help support startups and growth. And we're here. And so if people have, want to contact us and be pointed in the right direction, at Animation UK, we'll gladly help to do that, even if you're not members. But obviously we do want you to be members, because the louder our voice, the stronger our shout. And but we're here to provide that information too. So there's all of that stuff. And in addition to that, the Global Screen Fund, which I mentioned, which has just got another 3 years funding, and that's co-production, international distribution help, but that's a little bit further on, I'd say, from a start-up. And the tax relief, and we talked about that a bit in the last session for those of you who were there. I mean, it's quite handy to have a 20% tax relief. It's not enough. I hope we can talk about that a bit further down the line. But it's a good system. It's a good system, and there is money. And I know, I'm looking out now, I'm trying to actually catch the eyes of the jaded producers and studios who may have tried to find that money. I know it's hard and it's not enough, but we are working hard to change that position.
Thank you. That's very comprehensive. I think just maybe going up the line then, very briefly, maybe if there's one or two things that, Mark, you'd want to say, for example, on some of the issues that the industry is facing at the moment, whether that is skills, we haven't really talked much about skills, but the tax credits investment that Kate just mentioned. I mean, for you, what would be the most pressing things that you'd like to see?
Skills. We've got to get our act together with skills training. We've got to be a bit more innovative about how we go about pulling in people. It can't just be university training. I worry that universities are on a kind of money-making cycle, and they're starting to fail in terms of what they're providing to the industry. They're more interested in their own existence and financial existence, and they lose sight of actually what they're doing. That's been my beef with them for years. The animation tax credit, obviously, as Kate said, it is a great thing. We need it, but we're fighting against an Irish tax credit that's significantly higher than us. We don't benefit from the regional tax incentives that the French get. I mean, I had my eyes open to what you can get in France. So the fight doesn't stop. We've got a lot more to do, and there's a very, very rational argument for us pushing for a higher tax credit. It's not just like, well, we want more. For every pound spent, the amount of money that comes back in because of that is significant, and that's a real strong argument. We definitely need to bump the tax credit. Otherwise, people are going to go, where shall I go? I can get 30, whatever it is in Ireland, 30-something% in here, or I can get 20% here. They're going to go there.
Yeah.
And our call is, just to be clear, we're not waiting like PACDAR to do the case and the argument. We've been lobbying on this for the last 6 months. Our call is 32%, 37% in the regions and linked to IP. It's a strong case, and we're making it directly to what was the previous.
And it's not
government.
out of line with other global tax credits. So the
Oh, no,
Canadians,
no.
the Irish, and everything else. We're only looking in context of what's out there.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know if Sally or Walid, if you want to contribute, and then we're going to go to questions. If you guys want to, if there's anything there that you have.
Not really. I think, obviously there are challenges with these things, with credits and competing with other parts of the world. And I think it's a really important, valid point that if we're going to keep growing here, then, then you need to compete, like, on those credits. You're here, I say.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're going to open it up to audience questions. I believe there are people with microphones. I don't know. Do you want me to pick out people? Okay. Does anyone have questions?
It's the last day. I think all the questions should be in the form of either poetry or song.
Or interpretive dance.
Oh, I think Neil Hatton should dance.
Neil Hatton. I'm Chief Executive of UK Screen Alliance, which is in partnership with Animation UK. It's taken as a given that we've got quality in creativity, and you've all talked to that. But when it comes to crewing up, what we're short of is, when you're looking to crew up, you're finding it really difficult to get the talent you need, partly because of Brexit, and a lot of them have gone home and they're not coming back. So we have got solutions to this. For instance, there is a junior animator apprenticeship, and which none of you would actually have to pay for that training, because I'm sitting on £1 million worth of funds that I could give you to train your workforce. Okay, but you have to do it through the apprenticeship system. Now, we have that. We've got the first cohort of that happening at the University of West England right now, and we very nearly didn't get enough people offering placements to go on it. We need 12 people to make it worthwhile for the training provider. We got 9. 2 places were subsidised by Screen Skills, so the training provider could run it, and 1 placement, it's not even in our industry, it's Sainsbury's offered a placement, so somebody doing point-of-sale motion graphics. So what is it about the apprenticeship that you don't like?
I don't know. I mean, in terms of this being a focused conversation on investment opportunities, is a really, really important point to make about investing in skills and people and making the best of the investment that's available and on the table from government, right? That's a massively important point. But apprenticeship, rather than us going down, if you don't mind me saying, Neil, a kind of very specific avenue of let's talk about apprenticeships for the rest of the session, I think we definitely need a strategy on skills, and apprenticeships should definitely be at the heart of that. And we do want the £1 million, and we want our film schools and our art schools and our other courses in higher education to work better and closer with the industry to fill that gap. But there's no one magic bullet. So I'd say let's not just concentrate on refining and honing that one bullet on apprenticeships, and skills is definitely the challenge.
I'll answer it in part. It's because the choice of the candidates we're looking at as well, the quality of the candidates we're looking at, and this goes back to my point about the universities, how they're choosing and training the people through their courses. So for me, the universities process students now without really much care for the quality or the ambition to where they're going to end up. They're doing it because they can get fees, it's a money-making business. I appreciate that the apprenticeship scheme you fought for it, and that's well appreciated, I think, on all fronts. But I think that there's a disconnect between what's coming out of the universities, the quality of the graduates.
But the apprenticeship isn't aimed at university graduates.
No, I know. But you mentioned the University of the West of England, for example. We'll have a conversation offline about the University of the West of England.
We should. I mean, one of the things we didn't say actually in the panel was the huge opportunity for growth in the sector. The best estimate of the value of the animation sector globally, and this takes into account merchandising, all the downstream revenue of licensing and so on, but it's an eye-watering £260 billion industry, of which in the UK we have a market share of about, between everyone's best estimate, 1.6 to 2 billion. We, for all the reasons we've just said, have got real room for growth. There's real room for optimism. It's a huge global market. We should be taking a much bigger share of that. We can only do that if we're ramping up our skills and maintaining our talent. Apprenticeships is one thing, but it will take. But one of the things, Neil, as you know, is it takes a while. It's a 2-year program. You're talking small numbers. We need to think big and we need to think quick, because some of the companies in our membership who have won big, significant contracts have immediately turned around training 400 people to get them on board. And that's not an apprenticeship system, but there's no reason why we shouldn't do apprenticeships as well.
Timing is an issue.
Yeah.
Production timing. It's never ideal, and you can't always say we're going to commit to this period here. It really doesn't. It has to be much more nimble, agile. I was going to use, but that's
Yeah, I mean, keeping that prize in mind. We need to start kind of, opening up our minds to all sorts of different ways of doing things.
I would say one thing that's been interesting from our point of view, and going back to the Brexit point, we all know how much we've been hit by the European staff that we were used to working with closely and very creative. We've lost all of that, but talking to the French team, they're really keen to work in the UK. So we're now much more active about supporting visas and all of that than we were resistant to that before because of the cost, but we are now going to embrace that again because they really want to work in the UK. So we want to pull in some of the French staff into our team.
Brilliant.
But we are going to have to get into the weeds with all the visas again.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? In the front here?
Still on talent. Where is your talent coming from that does exist in the UK? I'm quite interested to know. Is it come through universities? Is it more and more young people who are learning craft at home? I work in film production, so it's mostly live action, but what I'm finding is that, half of the people I'm hiring are people who've, got Adobe licenses at home, who are learning Premiere and After Effects, and they're coming in much more kind of workplace ready than people who've been editing on Avid for maybe 20, 30 years.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's absolutely true. I think that's what I'm saying, we've got to be a bit more creative about how we do it, because I think, I'm not going to bang this drum too much, but I'll say it one more time, universities are failing us in terms of how they're, there's obviously socio-economic reasons why people can't afford to go to university, and we run schemes where we have open training courses for anybody to apply. I think we took 2 people on for the last one we did, a guy from an engineering company who, exactly as you say, he was working in his bedroom on software and stuff like that. He's transferred across and he's working on a production now. It's worked out brilliantly. So we've got to be much more creative about where we source that. We will go everywhere and anywhere. We've also got to be, we want to work with schools, and we're trying to, I think Catherine would, it's a whole session this is. Yeah. Catherine wants to establish a much stronger school to industry pipeline, because we've got to go further back pre-university to establish in schools that this is an industry that's worth engaging with, committing to, and wanting to aspire to down the line, because I don't think schools take it seriously. Part of that is obviously the governmental drive to erode all of our creative kind of education, which is going to be very damaging in years to come. We're not going to see that immediately, but it's going to really hit us down the line when those kids are not going to be coming through at all. But so basically, to answer your question, we go everywhere and anywhere we can.
And Waleed, I know you're going to be looking at staffing up later in the year. Is that something that you're thinking about already, where to find talent?
I think, I'd be interested. I'm here to learn exactly what the state of affairs are here in terms of talent, and in the immediacy, we're looking for kind of the executives and the creatives. So in terms of production staff and animation staff, that's something I'll be looking at and trying to assess as we move forward. And,
Thank you. Was there, I think, the person at the window.
It's just a thing that might be interesting to know. I'm not sure if you're new owners, Mark, will appreciate it, but there is a French studio called Team Toe, who are extremely successful. And their two founders, Guillaume and Corinne, have set up essentially a training initiative which has a pro-social approach, and it basically says if anybody's interested, whatever your background, if you're working in McDonald's or you're working in Marks and Spencer or whatever, you can come in and try out for us. And what they have developed is essentially a series of tests in terms of people sitting in front of a computer, literally for the very first time, give them a whole range of exercises to do, and they go, okay, you can animate. And that is essentially an open source initiative. They are very happy to tell you, your studio, exactly what tests to do, how you run it, and they are bringing in highly talented people into their studios who didn't even know that they could animate or it was a talent that they had. And what they're finding is that, no offence to the universities, etc., is these people are organically learning and bringing skills, and they're not having to worry about the stuff that was taught at the universities that wasn't relevant, etc. And secondly, the whole issue of who gets to work in the industry is completely levelled out because it's got nothing to do with your ability to afford an education, and it's got nothing to do with the life experience that you had that suggests this could never be a thing for you. So the company is called Team Toe, and I'm absolutely sure they'll tell you exactly how they run it. They were very clean last year at Cartoon Business to say, we'll tell you wherever you are that this is a thing, because we're on a mission to basically bring new people, diverse people into our industry. But they are French, and the Carrère Group, I mean, not the Carrère Group.
It sounds very much like
Group.
the scheme we're doing, albeit on a slightly smaller scale. We're doing exactly that. That's exactly what we're doing. But the thing was, we presented this to Cyber at the strategy kind of get-together, and they were really excited by it. So I would say Cyber are more than happy to embrace this, and we will be pushing that agenda to them. This is us.
They had something called like the bouncing ball test, and they basically asked people to sort of, do this.
We do those
and
things.
it becomes, something that you go, you can either get it or you can't. And those, as you'll know if you're doing it, people who can get that have something going on in their brain and their skills.
Absolutely, but it may not be the animation. They go in wanting to be animators and actually end up being comp artists.
Right. Well, yeah,
or they end up being production staff. So we're very open-minded to that. We run a system very much like that, but I will get more into it.
And when we develop our skills strategy, which we are in the autumn, we're really looking at good examples of what works. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, you're welcome.
I'm so sorry. Walid,
I just wanted to.
go.
Yesterday, I think it was John Mason's initiative for getting people into the workplace. I thought was fantastic, and it was really nice to see that being. So I think supporting those sort of initiatives as well. Certainly, what I would like to do would be a fantastic thing.
Yeah, no, they all sound great. I think it all sounds like a great initiative. I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. I'm so sorry. Maybe you can ask if there's someone specifically, you can grab them afterwards. But we are being kicked out of the room, effectively. So I've got a little announcement to make as well. If everyone is able to clear the room now, lunch bags will be available in the foyer from now. And they're today kindly sponsored by Jetpack. There's also going to be a lunchtime session on the main stage called Understanding Kids in the Metaverse. That starts at 12:30. And the next session here will be the Art of Preschool at 2 p.m. Thank you so much to our panellists. And thank you, everybody, for coming.